liberty that we maintain, bless that we can do it to your glory. We ask you to lift us up as Brother Brandon brings forth the message, and bless that it touch all of our hearts, and that we can be a light shining your way. Again, Lord, we thank you for the ones that were mentioned earlier, that you're laying your hand on them and giving you your healing grace, and continue to watch over them, watch over the ones with unspoken.
Amen. Well, tonight we're going to talk about a subject that is still kind of dear to my heart because it hits me a lot more than you think. And it's called to sacrifice, not comfort. And a lot of times we don't really think about it. We look at all the luxurious lifestyle we live, and we forget what our true calling is. About a preacher in the early, in World War I believe it was, how he was called to sacrifice. So we're going to take our text tonight from Luke 9:23. Luke chapter 9, starting at verse 23. And he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. You see, there's going to be some stuff in here we're going to focus on tonight. When we talk about taking up your cross and follow me daily, this you got to do it anymore. It's a lifestyle. It is a daily battle that we face. And so we're going to look at some of the things. You see right here, Charles Spurgeon said, a true godliness demands self-denial and cross-bearing. And if you have none of these, you are making a false profession. And that's Spurgeon way back in the early days. And it's so true, it rings true today. If we are not doing self-denial and cross-bearing, we're making a false witness. Same thing about false witnessing too. Are we living that lifestyle daily? If people were, the only way they saw Jesus was in you, would there be enough in you to show them about Jesus, of who he really is? Would your life show enough about who he is? Would your actions, your thoughts, would your reactions show enough about who Christ is? So that's what we're going to look at tonight when we go through this. But I want us to focus on when it says, what did Jesus mean when he said we have to carry our cross? We've all heard people say that this is my burden to bear. I have this, I have that. This is my cross to bear. We've all heard that. But is that really what he meant? Is that meant that, because we have special need children, that's my cross to bear? Or I have this debt, that's my cross to bear? Is that what he meant? No, that's not what he meant. When Jesus said, when we look, what was a cross? The cross in Christ's day was a symbol. It was not just a symbol of torture, but it's also a symbol of death. When you look back in history, you could see where the Emperor Nero, when he lined the rows of crosses. People were crucified back then all the time. The cross represented death. And it was not an easy, quick death. The cross represented one of the most gruelest death there is, because of the beating before the cross. So we see Jesus was telling them that they needed to put to death their own plans and desires. And our desires, and turn our lives over to him. Well, how do we do that? You see, you think about it, what is our plans? Do we have desires? Yeah, we all have plans in our life. We all have desires. But we live a life of luxury, and we forget about the main thing, because we put this life of luxury all the time in front of the cross. You see, you forget what came first. It's only because and people don't see that. We don't understand why we should be like that. We don't understand that Christ gave his all for us. So when he says to follow him daily, he also says in Luke 14:27, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. There's the key. Discipleship is what Christ truly died for. He didn't die for Christians. He didn't die for relationship with the Father and for disciples. Because that's what we're called to be. We're called to be disciples. We're called to have a relationship with the Father. Well, the price that comes with that is giving our life over to Him. Is giving up everything we are and being everything He wants us to be. That is the price. Is it a steep price? Yes, it is. Because you have to give up all your inhibitions and become what Christ wants you to be. You see, I was talking to Brother Jerry Oliver the other day, and he was humbled because going into that home that he lives in, he had to give up all his inhibitions for them to take care of him because of his handicapness. And it's put him in a true state of humility. But when you look at it, that's how we should be all the time. We should always be 100% dependent on Christ in everything, in every aspect of life. You know, I don't like little sayings a lot of times, but there's that old saying, what would Jesus do? It's true. When faced with problems, what would Jesus do in this problem? What would He do in this situation? How would He handle it? You know, would He go to a more luxurious lifestyle? Or would He go to not having anything to help other people? You see, my shirt is not our own. Our life is to share to everyone else the Word of God so others may know. That's what it boils down to. But what does it mean for Christians to sacrifice in contemporary times? We know what it meant back then, but in modern day, how do we sacrifice for Christ? How do we live a sacrificial life for Christ in these modern day times? One, helping the neediest. Helping the sacrificial life is eager willingness to give up comfort and privileges when what we will help the weak. You see, it's not all about comfort. You know, I have a few chairs and couch up here to represent comfort because you're in your home, that's your safe place. That's where we feel our most security blanket. We're not called to live in a security blanket. You know, we're not called to live on our comfort zone. We're called to go out. You see, when you take God's name, the first two, we're not called to sit, we're not called to lay down, we're not called to just relax and hang out on Facebook all day. We're called to get out and go and help the needy. That's what did he live luxurious? Did he even have a home? He was homeless. By all accounts, he was a homeless beggar. Other people. They went to other people's home and ate with them, ate their food, stayed in their house. He never had a home that was his own. He became homeless when it was time to do God's work. Living up until that point, you know, he gave up all his inhibitions, all his to help the weak. You see, that song says, I am weak, but thou art strong. We have to become weak in order to help the weak. Because only when we're weak is when we're our strongest. To bring him glory and honor. You got to understand, I can sit here and preach to you all day long and make you believe I'm an extremely godly man. but behind closed doors, my thoughts and everything are not godly, right? Why? It's a facade sometimes people put on. When we do that, our honoring God. Away from the church, what our lives are like, are we honoring God away from the church? Is it easy? No, it's not easy. We are human. We're going to fail. We're going to mess up. We're going to make a mess of this life. But guess what? That's what the cross was for. That's what it was for. You know, I heard a deal on the radio today. One person was saying that you think about it, we can't do nothing to tear God's love away from us. No matter how much bad we've done in our life, God's still going to love us regardless of what we have, good and bad. I mean, think about it. We live in a world of sin. God knows that. And He loves us anyway. And we got to remember that it's okay for us to forgive us. It's okay to forgive yourself. It's okay to sit down and still remember the past, but say, you know what, that past is covered by the blood. It's no longer there. We bring honor to God by giving the past over to Him and not dwelling in the past. We can't live in the past. If we're constantly looking backwards, we're not. So we have to bring glory and honor to Him. Give your everyday life to God. That's where it boils down to. We have to give our everyday life, not just our on Sunday, but our everyday life. Our everyday life has to be given to Him. You see, these chairs, and couches, they're nice. When I feel depressed and sad, guess what? My couch is screaming to me, come sit down. Just sit down right here. Here's the TV remote. Here's right here watching TV. It calls to me, and I give in a lot of times. I'm not going to be ashamed to say it. I do. I give in a lot of times to it. But am I called to sit on that couch and feel to get up off that couch and go forth and give my everyday life to God? Because you see, in the one translations in Romans 12:1 says, take your everyday ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. And it's an offering. You see, the people back in the Old Testament, the high priest was really truly the only one that could give the sacrificial offering to God. So they would bring their best and give it to God and offer it up to Him. Now God's asking us for our everyday life. When we start looking at our everyday life, is our everyday life worth being like, no, it's not. We don't, we're too insignificant. I'm not a big person. I don't have a lot of things. God uses the small and imperfect people to do big and great things. Think about it. Look in the Old Testament. David, a tiny little teenager, took on a giant. Significant because of we're not a big accomplished evangelist, or I'm not a big Christian as in the way the world expects a Christian to look. I can tell you, you could take the world's view of a Christian and throw it out the door because it don't mean anything. It's what the Bible says that counts. Spiritual living is often willingness to deal with and be available to the people whom we disagree with. You see, we all have those people that we disagree with. We all have those people that we just want to just choke slam them a few times and just throw them around the room. But no, we are called to agree with them. And I'm not saying agree with what they're talking about. I'm saying we are called to live a peaceful life with them. Even when they, you have to sacrifice that turn around and walking off instead of standing there and voicing your opinion. Because you gotta understand, we live to worship, and we live to worship with them. If at it and he's just cussing me out left and right, and I'll turn around and cuss him right back out, what have I done to my testimony to that person? He might be doing that just to rile me up to see where they're going to do it to you all the time because you said, I've been saved by grace and I'm a Christian. And in your heart, you have accepted. They'll find a way to try to tear you down. See how the devil works. They will nick and they will nag and they will just gnaw at you like little piranhas. But guess what? That armor of God in Ephesians 6 is piranha proof. It can handle the people that nick and nag at you all the time. It can handle anything they throw at you. Because in the end, it's what God's going to look at. Did you react in love or did you react in hate? See, we got to look at worship. Worship is everything we do in our life. We talked about tithing last Sunday, how tithing was an act of worship. Do you understand when we look at worship as when people are throwing all those punches at us and we're just wanting to just strangle them and throw them down? How we react is an act of worship. Think about that. Because if I go back, it says what? Give your everyday life to Christ. That's even your reactions to an action. It was Einstein said, for every reaction there's opposite and equal reaction. For every action there's our reaction. That's where the 4 little letters come in that the world has made money off of what would Jesus do. A true statement is a true question that we need to follow, but like the world, they've taken everything and they found a way to make money off of it. But it's true. What would Jesus do in that moment of anger? How would he do it? Is it worship? One, it's an intentional choice. All right. Versus comfort, it has to be a choice. Like I said, I can sit here and hang out on my chair, my nice little zebra print chair, and live my life and be comfortable. But I have to sacrifice all of that. I have to sacrifice. I have to choose. I have to make and go. It's a choice. You have to determine, that choice determines whether an action could be considered sacrificial. The concept of sacrifice might change based upon life circumstances. Everybody has different situations in their life. My situations that I'm facing right now are different than your situation. A person moved to an urban neighborhood. A single person chose to live in a depressed urban neighborhood and volunteer to meet needs. A married couple might choose to live in a suburban community for their kids instead of living somewhere nicer or buying a nicer vehicle. People are going to make deliberate choices. How are we going to help the needy? Am I going to choose to buy a better vehicle, or am I going to choose to take that money? A sacrifice. Yes, I really would love to have this vehicle. It's so nice. It's the best truck on the market. But do I need it? Or do I want it? See, that's where we have to get down to. Need versus want. I need something or do I want something? That's where we see the sacrifice. You have a needy family in the community that just lost their house. Everything got burnt. They lost everything. And yet you're over here, like, I can go buy this boat, I can go get this, I can get that because I just got a raise. But 2 doors down, this family just lost their house. Which one's more important? Remember, we have to sacrifice our comfort to help the needy. That's what we get down to. Because you look at other individuals might decide to live in a retirement home, but charity versus sacrifice. Here we go. Charity versus sacrifice. And Romans 12:1 presents a call to the whole church as a community and to individuals as members of the body. Remember, we are all equal. We're one body together. Right here, we're all one body. Not one person in here is more important than the next. We're all one body here. We all act as one body. We believe as one body. When we pray as one heart, this church will blow up. Heart. Together. Because when we look at it, that's where we get down to charity. You know, I think living sacrificial has often been interpreted as, at least our contemporary culture, as primary and individual effort. A lot of people think that living sacrificial is an individual effort. Well, it's not. Do you know the churches are called to live sacrificial too? What's more important? Us remodeling the church and making everything look big and pretty on the outside? Or taking that money and having stuff in the community? Ourselves are not simply ourselves, but are gifts from God who heals us. To truly see the reality is to offer ourselves back to God in a sacrifice of thanksgiving and praise. To sacrificially is to live abundantly. We're called to give it back. God gave me this life for one simple purpose, and that's to glorify Him and to honor Him. That is our purpose, is to show glory to God, to live a life pleasing to Him. And that needs ahead of sacrifice. We all can sit. I bet you I can sit here and ask certain people, and we can probably come up with 10 different families that need help in the community. Easily. Easy. We know there's people in the church itself, in our own congregation that has doing about that. The church has to remember one thing. It's not about the pocketbook in the church. It's about helping the congregation. We're called to help each other. And then we're also called to help those around us. How is CPR going to know we exist if we don't go out and talk? If we don't go and go out and do things for the community. You know, think about it. When was the last time we have held an event for the community to show them that we care and we love them? To sacrifice our time as a church to get to them. I mean, it's not always about the money. Yeah, we do. You just gotta have faith, because it will all come in. And it does. We just have faith in it. Because when we start to sacrifice, we look at things that are more important. Instead of fixing the church up, we help somebody down the road. But Christians are also asked you have to ask yourself, are there people in church that don't feel accepted? Are there people here that don't come to church because they don't feel accepted? Are there people in this community that don't come to this church because they don't feel accepted? Because of some way they were burned in the past? I mean, do we actually have people that come here that may not feel accepted? You know, Is all of our money that we take up, is it all going to church? No. We send it throughout the world. We send it out to missions. We send it to different programs to help many people. We send it to different other organizations inside Alexandria. We don't hold on to it. Why? Because it's not our money to hold on to in the first place. You know, it's God's money. But what are we doing for those that are in our own congregation and don't feel loved or accepted? How are we showing that we love them? How are we showing that we accept them? Personal feelings towards somebody to show them we love them. Think about it. Remember the people that I said you just want to choke them to death and throw them on the ground? They walk in the door of the church. How are we going to treat them? Are we going to treat them the same way we would outside the church? Or are we going to put on a facade and treat them like, oh, I love you, I love you, I love you, and then when you walk back out the door, you hate each other, you're worst enemies? No. We have to love them the same. And that's what we're called to do. We're called to accept those. Sacrifice, he insisted, must center on constantly asking the self, both individually and corporately, why am I doing what I am doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I willing to give up what I'm doing for others? And living sacrificially is an act and a process. Am I willing all up for other people? Am I willing to help, to just throw it all on the line and say, here it is. I give it all up to help somebody. To take everything I own and sell it, sell everything I own. What we have to get to. Are we willing to give it all to help someone else? And that comes down to selling everything we own and everything we have. Are we willing to get to that point to sacrifice it all to help somebody if God? You're going to go to Africa next month. Are you willing to sacrifice it all to go to Africa to help other people? Because that's where God's calling us. Think about it. Are we willing to sacrifice that? Are we willing to live a life in an active process? Consciously tithing all of life's aspects to God, making every day a sacrifice and bringing glory to the Lord in everything. This results in more peace and more concern about people than things or activities. You want peace? It starts with sacrifice. It starts with helping. I can't have told me they're here for me, they're praying for me. If I need anything, they're right there, just let me know. You know, they're willing to sacrifice it to help me. And that makes me feel good because that's where the heart of our church needs to be. If they're willing to help me out, then I know they're willing to get to that point. Because why? That brings peace. Let me tell you something, there's no greater joy sometimes as when you go and help a family out that's truly in need and you see the smiles on their faces. You see the love. You see them crying. Because they didn't ask, but you gave it to them anyway. You know, that hug and fuzzy inside. So when I tell you just makes you want to jump for joy and run because you feel good about yourself. Why? Because that's where you're supposed to be. That's what your soul, and that's what you were called to be. A giver, not a taker. But you're not living a life of sacrifice if things and deadlines become more important than people. You see, I lived this life for a long period of my life. I had to put deadlines in more important than my people that I worked for, or more people that were underneath me. The deadlines of the job was more important than them. Was I living a life for sacrifice? No, I wasn't. Why? Because things in more in place than people. There's nothing in the world. There's not a single thing in the world that's more important than the life of another person and the salvation of another person. And that's what it comes down to. Our life, and we start getting rid of the comfort that we have, and we put the cross ahead of the luxury, then we will become where we need to be. Peace. When the cross is in front of our life and we're following the cross, then we will know what it means to live a sacrificial life, because we had to sacrifice comfort for this. Times of relationships, but guess what? It's all going to work out in the end if you put the cross in front of it all. When we put the cross in front of everything in our life, peace comes. You see, Jesus doesn't simply call us to believe that he existed or even to believe that he can save us. And then follow him as his disciples. You see, it all goes down to follow. We have to follow Christ's example. We have to follow what he did for us. We have to be that disciple. You know, is Christ your master life? Have you put to death your own plans, committed yourself to do his will for your life? Don't be satisfied with anything less, for there's no greater joy than following Christ every day. Richard Wurmbrand, his quote was, "A man really believes not what he recites in his creed, but only the things he is ready to die for." And solitary confinement, physical and mental torture, extreme hunger and cold, these were the experiences of Pastor Richard Wurmbrand during his 14 years in prison in a communist Rwanda. Was his fervent belief in Jesus Christ and his public witness concerning his faith. You see, it was important for him to document how he and other Romanian believers met secretly for worship and fellowship and took great risks to evangelize the occupying Russian soldiers. Despite Christ's love and forgiveness to his persecutors. He said, "I love the communists with all my heart," he wrote. "Communists can kill Christians, but they cannot kill their love toward even those who..." Why? Because he went out and preached the word. He went out, he sacrificed his own family, knowing that if he was caught, he would be in prison. To go forth and preach the word. Look at the 12 disciples. All but one died a gruesome death. All but one. But what did they do? They gave up their comfort and went out. Are we in this point in our life where Christ is in everything in our life? Is he ahead of everything in our life? If not, this is the time where we need to make sure that he's everything we need him to be in our lives. Remember, we have to put the cross first in everything. Not just in some things, but in everything. Everything. You are looking for a new job. Your spouse is looking for a new job. you're got family problems, all that you want to find the answer to that? That's where the answer is located. You got to bring that problem to the foot of the cross. You wonder why you've been suffering in pain and agony all these years of what's going on, why God's doing this to you. Don't ask why. Ask, what can I do with this pain? How can I make this pleasing to God? Quit asking why and start asking, what can I do? What can I do, Father? Instead of saying, why me, saying, what can I do, Father? Come to the foot of the cross. That's where you're going.